Hey everyone, Daniel and Mitch here from IGN. I'm going to take a closer look at the Star Wars Battlefront trailer.
First up, Star Destroyer looming over Endor. Not something you typically see.
And birds.
And birds.
So we don't think the Star Destroyers are going to be like pilotable or anything like that.
No.
More kind of like design, atmosphere.
Yeah, we talked to DICE and it wasn't like, oh, you can call down fire from a Star Destroyer. They made it seem like it's a cosmetic thing, just for atmosphere,
Yep.
which is fine.
It's pretty menacing.
Yeah, as we pan down here on Endor, I love, you get to look at the Ewok village, you get to look at these gigantic redwoods. They look exactly like the California redwoods if you've ever been to the Muir Woods. But I like, there's this little Ewok guy in the bottom right running across the bridge. He's only as high as the guardrail. Little Ewok there. So it's cool to see that Ewoks will be on Endor in some capacity, because we did see people running around up here during
Yeah,
gameplay.
definitely, yeah. And also I think this kind of, you can infer some kind of gameplay beats from this. There's verticality to the maps, you can be shooting down from there and so on.
Big spiral staircases here going up the tree. So we get a good look at a scout trooper here being chased by a rebel on the speeder bikes. Taking a few shots, exactly like you'd expect. You can pilot these in Battlefront. And I love these practical effects so much. Like, these visual effects look like 1980.
Yeah, and everything we saw at the game at Star Wars Celebration, what they're really trying to do with this is kind of tap into the kind of filmmaking magic of the original trilogy. So it's not like a video game explosion, it looks like a visual effect explosion. Like
lots of sparks, big smoke effects, stuff like that. Like, it's not all fire like most movie explosions. And as these rebels come in, you can see how expressive they are. And they're yelling out orders and stuff like that. And during the gameplay, Daniel, we saw like the troopers will do stuff like this as they run around. They'll look around, they'll be aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, and a big part of the game is this kind of buddy system that you can partner up with one other player and share all your unlocks. So maybe that's a way of communicating that.
I'm trying to get a look because we know that there are alien races and we're going to see some. I just didn't notice this guy. I don't know what that head shape is. It looks a little bit like a Rhodian, but it might be something closer to like a Malastare. I can't quite tell. It's a little bit dark. But yeah, there are alien heads in this. You do get to customize your characters a little bit. And we'll get a look at this guy here.
Yeah, he's a Silistan.
And he looks like my old pal in the end up. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe that's racist to that alien race.
I think it is. I think it is.
I apologize. And again, these visual effects just look so great as every blaster shot ringing off a tree or off a rock is just heavy sparks.
Yeah.
Which isn't what you would expect. I mean, it's exactly what you would expect from a Star Wars game and not what you would expect from a DICE shooter. More speeder bike chase stuff. I do like as they come around the corner here, you get to watch this drop coming up. They're right there, and I'm curious how that affects gameplay. Like, could they have messed this up when they come around that corner? Is this a set track?
Or is it pulled under just automatically?
Yeah, I mean, these maps can't be very easy to drive around. I would have to imagine that there are certain paths that you can drive down, but I don't know, maybe you can definitely mess up and smash into a tree like somebody here is about to. Curious to know, if this thing does not smash into a tree, could you pick it up, do you think? Like, could it spiral?
I would like to think so, but also, like, if you're in the way of that...
Right, does it
does
hurt
that
you?
mean
Like,
certain death?
Sure, I mean, they respond pretty negatively to that. This guy's a little relieved that he's not been smashed into a tree. Actually, I realized I want to take a look at some of their weapons here. I mean, you can see this blaster. It's got a scope on it here. There we go.
Yeah, and the footage we saw, which was actual gameplay footage from a PS4, it was very similar to what we see in this trailer. And you can look down that scope, you can zoom in quite far.
Yeah, and if you're, you can switch between third and first person, like you would expect in a Battlefront game. This is a very different rifle. Looks a lot more militarized, a lot more like a, your average
like
American
rifle, yeah.
military machine gun. So there's a variety of weapons. We saw a sniper rifle. You see snipers up in the trees. They have really great advantage if they're up in the Ewok village.
Here's an ATST.
And there's that. I think this is that alien fella I couldn't recognize. I still can't quite tell what race that is. But I do love the way the sunlight and the leaves bounce off the ATST here. Just like some really great real-time lighting effects. Look at that. Look at that. It's got to be a ray shield, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the footage we saw, you seem to have, like, the character that was being played had a limited number of these. Yeah,
5 when we saw it. So I would assume that's either a temporary placeholder thing for the demo that we saw, or that's 5 for the entire match. Maybe there's opportunities like this and ATST comes along and you do what you can to save yourself. Before we move on, I want to point out, this jetpack is a separate item than the human has. She's got a backpack, he's got a jetpack.
Yeah, so it's not a class-based system, they confirm that, but maybe this is something you can choose to associate with your character.
And he's also got his rocket launcher here that we use the ATST.
Now, we saw the rocket launcher being picked up just environmentally, it was just there on the map, and look, after he's used it, he throws it away.
Get out of here, who needs it? And then that ATST falls down to the background, and that just stays there for the remainder of the
yeah,
battle.
it becomes part of the terrain.
This is some very strange imagery for me. Like, I have a really hard time processing an AT-AT roaming around on Endor.
Yeah, and that's kind of what they want to do with the game. It talks about the fantasy of Star Wars and kind of like assembling all these elements in kind of new and surprising ways. Not reality, not fiction breaking, but kind of surprising and interesting ways.
And this is part of the mode Walker Assault, so the objective is to take this thing down before it can do whatever it does. We can look here at these Y-wings searching over, strafing overhead. We saw somebody calling in earlier. Tell me a little bit about how this goes down in the game, Daniel.
Yeah, so when the Walker appears, you hear your teammates shout that the armor is too thick to be pierced. So what you can do, you can find a terminal in the forest where you can communicate to a nearby base and scramble the Y-wings to help you out.
And again, it's this thing that just like exists in the environment with the rest of the fight. And we hear Vader breathing in the background. We get a look at his Return of the Jedi lightsaber. It's Endor, so it's in that era. He didn't necessarily go down there, but here we are. Like you said, all about that fantasy, roaming around the world with Vader. And then now we finally get a look at something that is different than Endor. We're looking at Hoth. And I love, you see this guy jumping down in the trench. You have the satellite dish, you have the turret, you have the snow speeders going overhead, and then roaming over into this separate other side of the battle. Do you think this is part of the campaign? Sorry, not the campaign. The co-op missions.
Yeah, they said like obviously Battlefront, the core mode, the multiplayer mode is about these big epic fantasy battles, but there's also a special missions mode which are going to be single player, offline, or they can be co-op, local, or online, and they're going to be focused around key little distinct missions, maybe tied into the movie. So maybe taking down an AT-AT is one of them.
My favorite shot in the whole trailer. I love looking through the cockpit of an X-Wing at this fidelity, shooting down the TIE fighter, and then just kind of hugging the canyon wall. Just this near miss with this TIE fighter here, flying right over it. This is what Battlefront is all about for me, is like this kind of aerial combat in the atmosphere. So, a little bit about Boba Fett here. I didn't notice this the first time through. He's got his left arm. He's got the rocket. And he blasts those rebels off the edge. Flies up. Yeah, switches over. He's got his rifle. He's got his jetpack. He's going to operate very differently when you play as Boba Fett from someone like Darth Vader.
So he's one of those villains. He's kind of like when one of the players on the map becomes the kind of in-map boss.
Yeah. If you look in the background on the right side, you can see a flaming wreckage, a battle going on in the background, a big sandcrawler in the background.
Yeah,
some vehicles flying over it.
A bit bigger in the far distance, if you look, is quite easy to miss.
Which I did.
There's a crashed Star Destroyer.
So
just that's there. So we're a bit unsure whether this is Tatooine. The Jawas would kind of imply that.
Sure.
But they might travel to other planets in search of scrap.
I mean, they are scavengers.
Yeah, so maybe they're not, they're exploring the galaxy as well. The Star Destroyer would imply maybe this is the Battle of Jakku, which is leading into the events of The Force Awakens, because obviously we see that a crashed Star Destroyer at the beginning of that trailer.
Maybe this is our first look at Jakku in the game. It is very similar to Tatooine in that it's desolate and sad and it has a sandcrawler. But yeah, I mean, either this is Jakku, because we know the Battle of Jakku takes place a year after Endor, and you kind of create the wasteland that you see in The Force Awakens, or bringing Star Destroyers down is just part of what this game is.
Yeah, it's maybe one of those cool things that happens in the background just to give it a sense of scale.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. And then here, where is this, Daniel? Sullust, the ice planet with lots of molten effects going on here. This is where the Imperials manufacture all their weapons and their vehicles, like this TIE fighter hangar. And then, as they fly over, you get on the left side there, you get a little bit of a look at an Imperial shuttle. And then, of course, the Millennium Falcon coming in and wrecking stuff. And this is pilotable. This is a player flying around, presumably in some kind of hero vehicle. That's all we have for this Rewind Theater, except I do want to point out something just coming up here in terms of heroes. I would fully expect Han Solo to be somebody that we would play as. So, you get a look at his blaster here. We've seen that before in the dock, but now that we know heroes are playable, very interesting premise there. Anything else from you, Daniel?
No, I'm really looking forward to unlocking some of these players, and I wonder whether you can unlock iconic weaponry as you go along as well.
Indeed. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me, and for all things Star Wars Battlefront, stay tuned to IGN.